Contradiction number 14. The value of life equals death. One of society's primary moral achievements is in making the welfare of our planet and all life on it a primary human burden, enough to be put on the agendas of political manifestos and international summits and so on. We place significant attention on endangered species, to mistreated and starving animals, deforestation, the loss of animal and plant habitat, especially when all this is a result of human activity. There are fewer things that give me more hope for humanity than the fact that it can demonstrate such a concern for its planet. We are the predominant species, but thankfully we see this as a responsibility as much as it is a blessing. If something goes wrong out there in the natural world, it is our responsibility to attend to it. Furthermore, we celebrate natural life. We fly across continents to see birds and lions and rhinos and butterflies and coral. We put it upon ourselves to spend much money rearing pets, even if one were to argue that we benefit from having pets. But what about small things like putting bird seeds out in our gardens or feeding the pigeons in Trafalgar Square? One would sooner write a poem about the birds in Trafalgar Square than we would about Horatio Nelson, and I think this is quite right. Bearing all this in mind, it is therefore difficult to see how we manage to tolerate so much death and destruction of our fellow human beings. Millions die of malnutrition, disease, and conflict in every year. Is human life at least as valued in society as plant and animal life? Of course it is. No one ever argued against this. I'm not even going to ask that we get or argue that we get rid of our pets and use that money to save dying people or so on. The reason we still care for animals is not that we don't care for humans, is that we're trying to be holistic in our approach to the planet's welfare. We might as well start caring for animals and plants while we care for our fellow human beings as well, especially if achieving the welfare of both is not mutually exclusive. The contradiction of animal and planetary welfare and its principles comes to light on the matter of abortion. And I'm sure the reader here will expect me to take a side, either pro or against. I will not. Remember, I'm speaking from an extracted position. I'm here not to take a side, but to expose a contradiction. Does the life of a diseased pigeon or endangered rhino matter more than that of an unborn child, even in its early stages? Does it not live? Does it not live any more than plants and corals that we fight so hard to save? The matter is complex because we know a child about to be born is alive, but struggling to see how newly fertilized egg can be alive as well. Fine. I say a newly fertilized egg is just as alive as the coral we so desperately try to save. I do not even think that it is a matter of vagueness, like the previous contradiction, where some argue that life begins when an organism is self-aware or has consciousness. And we just don't know when that is. Did plants ever have these features in the first place? Personally, I'm happy for the vagueness question to remain unanswered. I don't think the moral question is actually one where we know that there's a boundary of where something becomes valued as life or not. What I do challenge are those who full-heartedly advance the cause for free abortion as if there wasn't a conflict at all. Okay, as if it was a black and white matter. And that's where the contradiction is. Even if you advocate for abortion, and for many reasons you should, you still cannot do so without some kind of inner conflict. Even if you conclude that the fetus is not a living thing, it is certainly too much like a living thing for the matter to be, just a simple foregone conclusion. What if, we've got it wrong? The only parallel in history I can give as a justification for this, or as a demonstration of this argument, is the justification for slavery. Right up to the passing of the first abolition bill by the British Parliament, there was strong scientific argument that Africans were subhuman And these arguments dominated the pro-slavery campaigns. Look, they said, they are clearly not as advanced in their civilizations as we are. Their brain anatomy shows attributes of inferiority. Their bodies were clearly built for physical labor, as if it was all preordained. The abolitionists made a simple argument which we, in the 21st century, not only believe, but feel. How could they say all this when anyone could see that Africans were clearly human? Fully human. What the pro-slavery campaigners failed to see was that even if their science was correct at the time, Africans were still too close to what we fully know as human, what they fully knew as human, for it to be a foregone conclusion. There must have been an inner conflict which they denied. The evidence and mere appearance of the humanity of Africans was far greater than any argument to the contrary, no matter how scientific it was. If we have this intuition about slavery, how do we not have it about unborn babies? How can we care more about coral than we do about fetuses? We see their body parts forming in the uterus. We see them moving. We see them growing, even if they're just a bunch of cells. I mean, aren't we all? More importantly, even if we never did see it, we feel it. We see couples celebrating the news of a pregnancy. Others mourn that they cannot conceive. They are devastated when there is a miscarriage, even as early as 2 months after conception occurs. And we comfort them as if it was a genuine loss. Does not all this tell us that there is something kind of like life going on in there? Does being pro-abortion mean abandoning these feelings? I may accept that the fetus is not fully human, if that's what the best science of our time does, but this makes me very afraid, because that's exactly what they said about Africans, 2 centuries ago. The contradiction is this: how can we have such strong sentiments about the welfare of coral and not even feel a conflict about abortion? Even if fetuses are not categorized as living organisms, they, like the perception of African slaves all those centuries ago, are too close to this category for the debate to be concluded without some kind of inner conflict. Look at how we treat slavery now. It is probably the worst legacy of modern Western civilization. What will future generations say about us regarding abortion? Will they say, should they not have erred with caution and sided with, if not anti-abortion, limited abortion, even if they weren't so sure? Now, my personal approach is predictably philosophical. It is utilitarian. I don't think there's no addressing the abortion question without the full knowledge that without some genuine harm, is caused in some pregnancies. In some cases, the life of the mother is compromised in a significant way, or the life of the baby about to be born. And, this is a huge part of the calculation, the moral calculation. Why not let there be an end? Let that be the end of the story. If giving birth causes more unhappiness than happiness in an objective way, let's just use the utilitarian calculus to tell us whether there should be an abortion or not. This calculus is one of the founding theories of ethics. And just because it is better to do something doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a conflict. If I had a chance to, kill Hitler in the 1930s, knowing what he was about to do, I would still have had an inner conflict because I really don't like killing people. I wouldn't want to kill anyone. What I object to is that abortion is permissible as a matter of hardcore line, hard line principle. That it is permissible without an inner conflict or feeling involved. That it can be done at any time for whatever reason. At the same time, we fight for the life of coral. And I find this contradiction, it just needs a little bit more thought.